This is a complete 1440 Tarkov monster packed inside a case that's only 26 liters. Quick disclaimer before we get started, I'm still getting over a cold right now, so excuse the voice, but I've been really excited to show you guys this build. This is the first episode of a new series I'm calling Built by PYUR. My idea is to build complete gaming PCs with a clear purpose and properly configure and optimize them and prove exactly how they perform and then make the finished systems available for someone to actually buy. For the first build, the goal was to create something compact and beautiful without sacrificing the kind of performance you'd expect from a meta Tarkov PC. So I'm going to show you how I put everything together, how I configured and tested it, and then we'll jump into some real Tarkov raids to see if it actually earns the title of a 1440 meta monster. Like I mentioned earlier, this exact PC will also be available for purchase once all of the testing is complete. By the time this video is published, the Jawa listing should be live as well. Alright guys, so this is the Lian Li A3 Wood Edition in white. Even though it supports a full micro ATX motherboard, a large graphics card, and a 360mm radiator, the entire case is only 26.3 liters. That makes it considerably smaller than a typical mid-tower, but it doesn't force us to use lower power hardware or a tiny cooler. The thing that drew me to the case is the design. The white exterior and wood front panel give it a clean and more mature look that I prefer over the typical all-glass, over-the-top RGB builds out there. Nothing wrong with them, just my preference. The mesh side panel keeps everything understated while still allowing the lighting to shine through, and it gives the system plenty of ventilation. For this build, I had three main goals. I wanted top tier 1440 Tarkov performance first of all. I wanted to fit everything inside a genuinely compact case, and then I wanted the final system to look like a complete design instead of a random collection of parts. The motherboard is an ASRock B850MC. It gives us the current AM5 platform in a compact micro ATX form factor, and it gives us all the connectivity and expansion we need here. For the CPU, I went with the top dog Ryzen 7 9850X3D. Tarkov is extremely CPU dependent, especially on maps like Streets. For memory, I've got 32 gigs of Crucial DDR5 rated at 6000 CL36. Storage is handled by a 1TB Samsung 990 Pro. The GPU is an ASRock RX 9070 XT Steel Legend. This is probably the best maxed out 1440 GPU you can get for the money right now. It has more than enough power and VRAM for a high refresh 1440 in Tarkov and most games in general without jumping into the 1K plus price range. One thing I do want to mention though is that because Tarkov is so CPU heavy, a lot of people have the misconception that the GPU doesn't matter. The GPU is still an absolutely critical part of a Tarkov build. It doesn't use hardware the same as modern games, but while the CPU determines your FPS ceiling, your GPU determines what resolution and settings you can reach that ceiling in. So it makes a huge difference what GPU you're using, even though it doesn't determine your FPS ceiling, if that makes sense. Powering everything is a Rosewill VMG 850. Plenty of headroom here with the CPU, GPU, fans, AIO, and having that fully modular design is key when we're trying to manage all these cables inside a 26 liter case. For cooling, I'm using a CPS PC Cooler DS360. It's an AIO with an LCD display. To be honest, this is mostly for aesthetics because this cooler looks really nice and the LCD looks cool. The case fans are white Thermalright TLS12RW reverse blade fans. The reverse blade allows them to work as intake fans while keeping the cleaner side of the fans visible. So the AIO is acting as the exhaust, and the rear and bottom fans are the intakes for this build. Once everything was connected, I gave the system one final inspection, installed the panels, and got ready for the first boot. Everything powered on successfully, but assembling the hardware is only half the job really. Before I'd ever sell any of these systems under the pyurologie name, it needs to be properly configured, optimized, and tested. I updated the motherboard to the latest stable BIOS, enabled the Expo profile for the DDR5 6000 memory, and even tightened up the secondary and tertiary timings a little more. Made sure resizable bar was on. For the CPU, I am running a plus 200 MHz boost clock override and a minus 15 undervolt. After installing Windows and the latest chipset and graphics drivers, I ran Cinebench 2026 and got a score of 577 for the single thread benchmark. After I got everything configured, I booted up Escape from Tarkov and queued into an online Streets raid. I wanted to see the raw performance first without any frame generation, and as you can see, the performance here is top notch. At 1440 native, using my PYUR 80 preset, which is basically optimized ultra, we're getting around 180 to 200 FPS in streets, with certain areas pushing beyond 200. This is why I consider this combo the 1440 meta for Tarkov. We're playing the heaviest map in the game, online, at 1440 Ultra native, and we're still getting the kind of performance that can utilize a high refresh monitor. Now, my basic rule of thumb with frame generation is that you need at least 80 to 100 raw base FPS before you should even think about turning it on. When your base performance is already that strong, the added latency is small enough that most people probably won't notice it, but what most people will notice is the increase in visual smoothness. And I think that's what I see people get wrong about frame generation the most. It's useful to make good performance look even better. It feels about the same, but it cannot magically make bad performance good. So let's say you're getting like 40 FPS and you turn on frame generation. You might see a much higher number after turning it on, but the responsiveness underneath is still coming from that lower base frame rate, and it's also doubling that input latency from that low frame time. So you already had bad performance. Turning on frame generation just exacerbates that bad performance and makes it worse. Frame generation is not a magic tool, it's just a way to enhance good performance. So we're starting at 180 to 200 raw base FPS here. So this is an ideal situation to use AMD Fluid Motion Frames. We can get a large improvement in visual smoothness at a very small, practically unnoticeable cost to responsiveness. So here we are with FMF 2.1 enabled. The FPS is beyond 400 in certain areas. For the most part, it's between 300 to 400 around the map. Of course, performance on streets is always going to fluctuate depending on where you are, what's happening around you, and how many players or AI are nearby. But throughout this raid, the system stayed extremely responsive. I couldn't really perceive any increase in input lag at all. And let's be clear, 180 to 200 FPS already looks amazing. You absolutely don't need frame generation here, but once you do get into that 300 to 400 FPS range, there's an extra level of visual smoothness that just adds this cherry on top. Temperatures on the CPU and GPU were both hovering right around 60. I don't think I saw it go over 63 at any point. The noise levels were low, barely audible, and the system remained smooth and stable throughout the whole raid. I'm extremely happy with how this machine is running. It has a raw performance, I think, to earn the title of a 1440 Tarkov meta build, and FMF just gives you that additional level of smoothness if you want to use it. It's not for everyone. If you're extremely competitive or an esports player or something, just skip it. But for the majority of us out there, if you meet the requirements to use it properly, then I think it's worth trying out at least. So yeah, the final result is exactly what I wanted from this build. It has the performance of a high-end gaming PC, but it fits inside a compact 26-liter chassis that doesn't take over the entire desk and just adds to the aesthetic of the entire setup. The white components and clean lighting work perfectly with the wood front panel. The mesh side keeps everything looking clean and understated while giving the hardware plenty of ventilation. And if you ever want to admire the build, you can always run it with the panel off as well. I was doing that a lot during testing. I just think I did a pretty good job. It looks really nice. More importantly, the performance backs up the appearance. The 9850X3D gives us the CPU performance Tarkov needs, while the 9070 XT is powerful enough to deliver a high refresh 1440 experience without getting into the $1,000 GPU territory, where you're probably not even going to utilize that extra power. So this exact PC has now been fully built and configured. I benchmarked it, and it will be available through the pyurologie Jawa page. So I've been selling one-off builds through Jawa, but this is part of a custom PC business I'm working to try and build through the channel. So the goal isn't just to assemble random parts and flip them. I want every system to have a clear purpose, be properly optimized, and come with real performance testing so the buyer knows exactly what they're getting. A lot of times when I look at pre-builds out there, they kind of just throw arbitrary numbers that sound good and look good, and all that might not actually tell you how it's going to perform in what you play. Especially with Tarkov being such a unique game in the way that it utilizes hardware, I think that real performance testing carries a lot of weight. If you're interested in this one, the listing will be linked below. If you want to follow along as I build, test, and sell more systems like this, make sure you're subscribed. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.